Hash House and Circle Up.
Welcome to On, the Hash House Harrier podcast for interviews, history, and stories. I'm your host, Ra.
Welcome to On, Hash House Harriers Talk in History. I am a guest interviewer, Crotch Thumper, and I'm touring, getting ready to go to Interhash, which is in New Zealand. Today I stumbled upon Chips, longtime hasher, well known in the Wellington area. She started a few hashes and also helped with a few others. Welcome, Chips.
Hello, hi, and on to you too.
You started a few hashes. Can you tell us about those?
Right, well, my first hash run was in Suva in Fiji, which is the Fiji Islands in the Pacific, and I started there in November 1977. Up until that time, I was pretty athletic. I did a lot of running, and I wanted to go running, and someone told me about Hash House Harriers. When I went to join, I discovered it was a men-only group, and so rather than miss out completely, I decided I'd start a ladies' Hash House Harrier group in Suva, Fiji, which I did in November 1977. At the time, I was working for New Zealand's Foreign Affairs Ministry, so I was posted to our High Commission, or embassy as it is now. That's what my job took me overseas, and that's where I first learnt about Hash House Harriers. I came back to New Zealand in 1978, and there was a Hash House Harrier men's group in Wellington, so I started the Wellington Ladies Hash House Harriers, just so that we could. The men discovered that they wanted to be with their ladies, and now we have more men running with our group than we have ladies sometimes. And we started that group in November 78. Then my next posting took me to Beijing in China, where we also started a group up there, and it was in the time of the Cold War. So, of course, we saw a lot more of China and Beijing with our runs through the hutongs in the back streets of Beijing. That started in 82, and then came back to New Zealand, and our group had grown so considerably in Wellington that we had to start a new hash, and the Port Nicholson Geriatrics was the next group to start in 1985. And in 1994, Wellington Hash House Bikers started. So these are my main groups that I've run with.
Oh, excellent. Well, we already ran a hash this morning. There was a cruise boat with many hashers on that from Sydney and having one stopover in Wellington, and they're going to end up in Auckland. But we're going to run another hash tonight, the Wellington Ladies, which is the hash you helped found.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Looking forward to that. Tell me about your name. How did you get Chips?
When we first started the hash, we didn't have hash names, and I was the GM. So I got called GM, and the whole time that I ran with Wellington Ladies, I was known as GM, went to Beijing, and when I came back 3 years later, Wellington Ladies by then had been formed for a couple of years, and the hash GM was called Haggis, and they wanted an assistant GM, and my surname at the time was Wood, so they just thought that Haggis and Chips would go well as GM, so that it was a very simple name actually, Chips. So Haggis and Chips sounded better together as the joint GMs, so that's how it came about.
Do you remember your first hash? What was that like?
My very first hash in Suva was running around the streets, and of course it's a Pacific island, so it was really a lovely area to be running in, and if you got hot you fell in the sea. We used to run from the Suva brewery, which is well known up there now. They were often our sponsors if we needed beer, so it was probably the perfect place for me to start, and I was young and quite fit in those days in the 1970s, last century.
What were the trails like? How many kilometers? Was it hill?
Quite flat,
trail?
really. Really, it was quite flat. We ran around through. Suva's not a large city. If it is a city now, it wasn't large at the time. A lot of beach running, a lot of tropical forest, tropical bush, really, not forest, and not very long. I guess we made sure that we were back within the hour.
Oh, that's good. What was Circle like?
Circle, we didn't have a circle as such in those days, and certainly we didn't sing songs. The fines came in a little bit later, so it was learning as we went, sort of trying to learn from the men who we did not run with, but since then we've progressed the wrong way.
Right, is it men and women for the Suva Ladies?
Yes, the Suva Ladies closed down after I left, or some time after I left, and joined up with the men, and it's just called the Suva Hash now.
Gotcha.
I went back in 2018 because we had Interhash in Nandi, which is the other side of the island in Fiji. So I went back, and it was lovely to be met by them all there. Very few were there that I knew from my days, but they made me very welcome, and it was great to go back and find the hash still thriving.
That must have been a good welcoming.
It was.
Welcome.
Fireworks and all.
Have you ever had any run-in with the local police or any of the authorities during any of your runs?
No, but the Interhash in 2018, it's the first time we've had police escorts. They closed traffic roads for us. We had a little motorbike outrider who would stop, and when we wanted to cross the road, he would stop and halt the traffic so that we could cross the road. Other than that, in Wellington, I can't think we had. During the days of anthrax, we had a lot of people complained about the powder on the streets, thinking that it was something dangerous. On one occasion, we were running when the police were alongside of us on the road. When we asked them to join us, they said that they were looking for a different kind of hash. So, but no, we're pretty good, really.
Yes, I understand. What is your idea of a perfect trail? What would that include?
Perfect trail, relevant, I would call a flat trail. Everything's relevant. It's relevant going up to the relevant going down. I like a little bit of hill work. I like a little bit of flat work. I like to have a break now. I'm getting on, my years are getting up there. So I enjoy the circles, and I usually try to sweep a bit more and do the marking of the trail for those that are left behind. So I'd call myself a hash walker nowadays.
Do you have any fun stories from that stick out from your past? Any fun places that you've been, or something that you've just wondered, this is fantastic, I would never have gotten here if it wasn't for the hash? Anything?
When we started in Wellington, I had been there about 4 years before I got posted overseas. I didn't know Wellington very well, and I have to say I learned every little alleyway, every little street that led off into places I'd never been to. So I actually learned a lot about Wellington in a few years by running these little trails, little alleyways. And Wellington's got a lot of them because we go up into what we call our green areas, our green belts, and you find a lot of trails and tracks up there, and I would never have found them if I didn't run with the hash. And I do love bush running.
Absolutely. I've noticed something that you do different in New Zealand to mark trails, and I would like to bring that home with me, and it's called a...
Dribble dropper.
What is that?
Now a dribble dropper means that you do not have to bend down or to mark the trail. We actually have a stick with a tin on the bottom, a very large tin, and at the base of the tin we've marked some sort of marking that shows what hash group you're with. So most people put an H with a little 3 alongside of it. When you tap it on the ground, the flower drops out and it has a little H3 on the ground, and you follow it. Some other hashes put, something that's relevant to their hash. Maybe the geriatrics, I think, have got an old walking stick type thing, a trident walking stick. So they put a trident on the ground. Especially in Wellington, where we've got hashes every day of the week, we need to make sure that we're not following an old trail from the previous night or the previous week. So we try to have it. But the dribble dropper it's been around for years in New Zealand, and it is so basic to make. You just have a large, which we would call a coffee tin, fill it with flour, and then tap it on the ground. There's a stick screwed to the side of the tin so that you actually stand upright, and you can run and just swing it with your gait and mark the trail as you're running along.
Love learning from different kennels. What works for them is awesome. What are your favorite parts of the hash?
The camaraderie, most definitely. Wherever you go in the world, once you know there's a hash in that town, and we look it up online, and I'll always go for a run if I'm on holiday in Australia or in the UK. And like I said, when I went to Beijing, we went across to Moscow. We went running in Moscow in the snow, so they had to use paint. It's the camaraderie and the fact that you don't need to know anybody at a new city, but when you get there, you're made welcome as soon as you arrive. So
instant friends, and you get to see the underground.
Exactly.
You get to little tour, even today, of just all the hashers on the cruise boat coming off and showing them a good time, showing the waterfront and showing them Te Papa Museum. Yeah. It was very nice. And they're having a cookout also. What is your least favorite part of the hash?
I don't think I've got a least part.
Driving home.
Yeah, that's very true actually, because nowadays you can't have too many beers if you're driving home. And as I live 1 hour usually from where the hash takes place now, it's my choice to be up the coast and I should start a hash up here. It's 1 hour, so I have to be careful about what I drink. So it's 1 beer and a meal and off home, or 2 beers quite often. So that's my least happy part.
Influential hashers. Who can you think of that helped mold you to the hasher you are today?
I've been around a long time, so most of my hashers that moulded me. One would be a chap that was called Auntie, and he was a lovely guy. And in fact, it was quite strange. I'd just come back from China and I was setting a hash run in my suburb in Wellington at the time. And this chap came up to me and said, "Are you setting a hash trail?" This chap's name was Auntie, and he was in the New Zealand Air Force. And he said, "Can I join you?" And I realised that he knew a lot more about hash than I did. And he came to every hash after that, and he knew everybody. He was RA for times, he did everything, and in the end his position was called Dog's Body because he did almost anything and everything for the hash. And he taught me that just be prepared to accept whatever comes your way in the hash and enjoy, and that's what we did. And lots of laughs. He was such a fun guy, yeah. I think he's probably the person that moulded me most.
Or when you traveled, are you excited to see certain hashers?
Yeah, I am. I love seeing hashes I haven't seen. When I returned to Nandi for Interhash, it was good to catch up with a lot of friends, but even to go back to Suva, where I first started, it was lovely to be just received like, having somebody back that was what was my mother hash. I loved going back there, and I have a very soft spot for Fiji anyway.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember some of the names?
No, I can't. They all changed because I would have been way past. They're all new people to me now. Yeah.
Any other hash stories that you can think of that some crazy weather or?
When we first started, ladies, we were quite down on numbers because it was quite new. And in wintertime in Wellington, it can get extremely cold. And Wellington is known because it's right at the bottom of the North Island of New Zealand, that the wind blows in from the south, and it's a howling southerly, we call it. We had on one occasion where it blew in and ice was forming on a chap's moustache, and it was raining, and there was 3 of us left that were trying to complete this trail, and we were right on the south coast. It's the coldest I've ever been, and it's probably the fewest hash numbers we've ever had in our hash, but we were down to 3, and plus the hare would have been 4 that night. So that's one of the things that I will always recall, that cold, bitter run, but we were still true hashers and we still insisted that we would do the trail. Another occasion it was pouring with rain, and I had made curries to have for the on. And when the people arrived, they came into my house and smelt the curry, and they looked outside and saw it was pouring with rain and said, "I don't think the trail will still be there." And I said, "Well, I have just laid it, you must go out and find out." But they wouldn't leave the house, so my trail had washed away, and it was the smell of the curry that they didn't leave the house. So I told them they weren't allowed to put that to their run records, but I think they did.
And when you have a southerly here, it's a pretty cold blast from Antarctica.
Exactly. It comes straight off the South Pole, and Wellington is right on the bottom of the North Island. Admittedly, there's a South Island, and that gets cold weather too, but Wellington gets extremely cold southerlies in the winter.
You've been hashing a long time. The vision of the future of the hash, especially Wellington ladies, how well do you think that's going? Are they recruiting a lot of people? How do you think the future of hashing is going to be?
Wellington ladies actually is in a good position right now. We have hashers who have met at, we call it a hatch and dispatch. So we've got,
say it again.
I've got to get that. I haven't had a drink yet. That's
yeah.
We have couples that have met at hash. I met my husband at hash. We've got couples that met at hash, had children at hash, and now those children are now coming through. And in fact, in the Wellington ladies, these children, which now are like 25 to 30, are now on the committee, and us oldies sit back and enjoy it. It is so neat to have people of 25 and 30 joining us. But the younger ones of the hashes that did run with us have now drawn in others who are at university with them or something. So we've got quite a young bunch in our hash, which is most unusual. The other Wellington hashes are struggling a little bit, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Went to a geriatrics hash, and that was a lot of older people and not a lot of newer people, but I'm excited to see Wellington ladies. You do mention that your husband, you met at the hash.
Yes.
Which hash was that?
Oh, Wellington ladies. But we started Wellington ladies and he came to it. Then we got to about 50 and it was too big, so we started this Port Nichols and geriatrics, meaning that some of the older ones would go to that. So, and we had kids at the time then. He went to Geries on Tuesday and I used to go to Ladies on Wednesday so that we could continue to both enjoy hash. But of course, if we had anniversary runs or special runs, we'd join up and take. The youngest one came with us quite a bit. He got named as well.
And what was his name?
Nibbles.
Nibbles.
Because I was Chips and my husband was Mouse.
And you had a child with a name?
That's it. My husband's name was Mouse.
Oh.
The child's name is Nibbles.
Nibbles.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Raoul likes to express the phrase bottom feeders. If you met your husband at the hash,
Yeah.
you're a bottom feeder.
I haven't heard that terminology. That's good. I like that. Yeah.
You were in Rotorua, the interhash.
Yes, in 1994.
Yes.
Excellent. One of the best interhashes. I don't think we had any problems. The police were well aware that we had 3,000, I can't remember, 3,000 or 4,000 people there. I had, nothing to do with the organisation, but they had a park that we had in the middle of town, and we were contained in that park. All the beer was sponsored, and the runs were out of the park, outside, so we were put on buses and taken to like Redwood Forest or some lakes, and we all met at one of the lakes for a swim and for the circles. It was one of the best interhashes that you could go to, I'm sure. I think a lot of people around the world still talk about it. So
I hear a lot about that.
yeah.
Have you ever been to any other interhashes or any other large events?
No, I haven't. I haven't really. Mainly because of my job. Because I was in our foreign office, I'd be home for 2 years, away for 2 years, back for 2 years, away for 2 years. So I would hash overseas. And even now, when I go travelling, I've got a son in Australia and 2 brothers in Australia. If I go there, I often go for a run there and even take my brother along. Not that he's a hasher, but now he doesn't run now, of course, but he used to. So yes, on the eastern coast of Australia, been for a few hashes there. I enjoyed meeting people overseas when I do go, but it's usually around the Pacific now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you hash any other groups around North or South Island?
If I'm away, I do. I mean, I've run with the Hamilton hash quite a lot because that's where I was born. I've run in Rotorua quite a lot, Napier, Palmerston North, Nelson. I've got the odd runs with a lot, but to count them all in, and I mean, like when we were in China, we ran with Hong Kong, and they had about 3 or 4 hashes there. And when you went out on leave, I ran down in Thailand. So you could do ones, but they're just odd runs here and there. If you're at the place at the night of their hash, yes, I would go. Yeah.
If someone points at you and says, "Give me a hash song," with coming off at the top of your head, what is your favorite go-to song?
Wow. When we first started hash, we had one song, which everyone had. Yeah. Then we had a lady came back from overseas who brought in all these songs, and now we try to remember them all, and I could sing them. But we had one, and I was talked of Auntie a little while ago, and Auntie's favourite was always, if people wouldn't sing, he would just go, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on your head. So now, if no one thinks to sing, I always say, Auntie's song, and everyone does that.
Have you ever been injured on trail?
No, the odd sprained ankle, no.
How many years and you'd never really been injured on trail? That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I've been hashing now for close on 48 years.
That's impressive.
Whether I'm going to make the 50-year mark, I might have my toes pointing to the sky by then.
Let's hope not.
No, a couple more years.
Okay, we have one more question.
Yeah.
Is the RA always right?
Never. The RA can say and do what he likes, and he makes up stories, and I do too. So I can't talk. I have held lots of positions in the ladies' hash, and still do, to be honest. But as I said, we've got lots of young ones coming through now, so I've retired to being the cake maker for birthdays and celebrations, and I'm also the haberdasher, so I buy all our gear for our hash. But the RA, no, I believe what they say, and I know when it's not correct, but we still believe it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chips. Thank you very much for the interview. This is Crotch Thumper, and headed towards Interhash in New Zealand. On.
To close the circle, here's the hash anthem sung by Mother Hash.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet